And I tell him what happened, and that they just left the office, the library, and it's over, they're not going to get married, everything's beseder. He says, "Ze kimmen zusammen in the Texas?" I said, "Okay, you're hopeless." He gave up on him. I think the only thing you can say, and you don't even try to break it up, what you can say to a couple who are planning to get married is, Gesundheit, but it's not really a marriage. You can live together happily, live happily ever after, but don't call it a marriage because it's not right. A marriage is a reunion. A soul that got divided into male and female parts, they find each other, and by getting married, they are reunited. But if it's two separate souls, it can be a union, but it won't be a reunion. So don't call it marriage. That, they can't argue, and they have to go home and think about it. Why is it not a marriage? Because you're not from the same soul. A Jewish soul and a non-Jewish soul. So living together, calling yourself married, fine, but you don't really need a wedding, you don't need a rabbi, because it's not really a marriage. You're not threatening, you're not accusing them of anything terrible. You're just telling them that what you're doing right now is just about as close as you can get. You're living together. What do you need a wedding for? Why try to make it into something that it's not? Do what you're doing, live happily ever after, and sei gesund. That has given people reason to rethink what they're doing. Sometimes the non-Jew is more religious than the Jewish partner, and you can appeal to the non-Jew. You love each other, you want to get married, you want to do it all right, but the question is, does God consider you married? You can consider yourself married, society can consider you married, the media can consider you married. The question is, does God consider you married? And how are you ever going to know? If you want to know, the answer is God doesn't consider that a marriage. So again, you can be married, but without God. And often, the non-Jewish partner is more shaken by that than the Jewish one. You probably have had experience where you try to convince them not to get married, and it always turns out pretty bad. They hate you, they lose all respect for you, because you're dealing with irrational people. When they're hung up on each other, and they're already very emotionally entwined, to tell them, no, you can't, there's nobody home. They're not listening, they don't hear it, they can't accept it, and it just creates an enemy. So the only way to approach it is, it's fine, it's good, it's nice, but whether God considers you married and whether it's really a marriage, a wedding, isn't going to change anything. So it's almost like you're saying, yeah, go ahead, create a relationship, continue the relationship. Just know that if you're talking marriage, it's not really a marriage. Like a little technicality. You don't lose them, they don't hate you, and maybe they'll think about it. And that's about the best you can do these days. There's another side to this whole issue. When the parents come to you for advice, the Jewish parents, what should they do? Their daughter is marrying a non-Jew, or their son is marrying a non-Jew. What should they do? What is your advice? Should they go to the wedding? Should they boycott? I just had a question that parents were asking. They're planning to get married, his daughter, nice Jewish girl, and the reason they're getting married, or part of the reason, is because she's already pregnant. And she doesn't want to have an abortion, she wants to have the child. They both are going to raise the child together, they're going to get married, it's going to be beautiful. So they've been dealing with this, and a week ago, or 2 weeks ago, they announced that they're having a gender reveal. You know what that is? They do a scan, and they find out what the baby is, and then they make a big party and tell everybody whether the baby is a boy or a girl. Should the parents go to this party? Should the siblings go? Should anybody go? Should somebody go? So obviously it's a very individual issue depending on the people. Did the daughter ever get along with her parents? If not, there's nothing to talk about. If they always got along, and this has been...
Can't happen. Of course, if you send it to Hebrew school, no. Was she busting this for no? So now, okay. So understand it's not her fault, it's your fault. But it's still I can't. Okay, give you her number, I'll try, but realize that there's not a lot going on. Now I called my father at the time, which was 10 years ago, and he said, which I think is a great insight.
Who's your
Similar to
father?
what you said, Shalom Schwartz, Shalom. So he said like this. He said, try to use the word, forgive me, Jesus Christ as much as possible when you're talking to her. She's a Jew. Because every Jew gets unnerved by those two words. And he says, just keep on hammering it. You want your kids to serve JC. You want them to have midnight mass. You want to eat the crackers at JC. And so I had that tool because he was, religious and she was freaked out by this. And it fell apart, So I thought she ended up marrying a nice Jewish boy. And that was one of the success stories. But the idea of pushing the religious part and just a nice cool tip you could use from them.
That sounds just like your father. So she ended up getting married without Yoshi.
She ended up marrying a nice Jewish girl because that's myself. She had the wedding and
Wow.
they have three grandkids.
Yeah. You're right. It's a little easier if the non-Jew is a religious non-Jew.
Right. She was bothered by the idea that her kid. I said, you discussed about where you're going to send your kids to school. No, we never spoke about it. So then you have a great wedge right there. What if he wants the kids to go serving JC? What if they want to bow down to JC? This is already because she had a seder. She went to shul for Yom Kippur.
Can I suggest that maybe you and Misha's workshop supposed to be...
Yeah, right.
Maybe it's diet for the two of you to sit on the chairs. And bring the mic off of this thing. And that way we can have more of a... Because Rabbi Friedman didn't know who his father was, he couldn't see his face.
Yeah.
It's almost easier to explain to a guy why you shouldn't marry a shiksa because his kids are going to be white. But a girl, it almost seems perfect for them. There are differences in how you explain one or the other.
Yeah, if the girl is Jewish and the guy is completely neutral on all religious issues, so, like, where's the catch here? What can you hook? Yeah, he's willing to send him to yeshiva. Maybe he'll even convert someday. They've got you locked in like you can't. any argument you offer, they've already covered the base.
They showed a video here a few years ago, Pearson Rishon, where they covered half the screen who the Rebbe was talking to. And it was a Jewish family came to the Rebbe. I'm sure we understand. The Rebbe said these words, which aside from what you just said, the Rebbe said, tell them they will be living two separate lives under one roof. Those are the words the Rebbe used, like they're going to be living two separate lives under one roof. That's how strong the Rebbe said.
The Rebbe said to tell them that they would be living two separate lives under one roof, which of course is not a good idea. The question is, how do you convince them that that's the case? No, they're going to live together, they agree on everything. The truth is they're going to live two separate lives. How do you convince them? So if he's religious, it's a little easier. The aspect of this whole thing that really freaks me out is the coldness and cruelty of the Jewish partner to their parents. I can't believe this phenomenon. The parents are literally getting sick over this. They're in pain, they're horrified, and the kid is totally unsympathetic. Talking about religious parents. And the kid says, the son says, I'm marrying her. The father said, would she consider converting? Listen to this. Would she consider converting? He says, well, we mentioned it to her parents, but they're not comfortable with that, so no. No, because her parents are not comfortable with it. The cruelty, the vicious, the achzorius. Then he says to his father, you're going to come to the wedding, right? And if you come to the wedding with a sour face, then better don't come. So not only does he have to come to the wedding, he's dictating his father's feelings. You better come happy. So the question of why does he want to marry a shiksa? Why is he so cruel to his father? Where is this hate coming from? And there was no history of that. You don't want to be frum, fine. You don't want to keep Shabbos, okay. Why do you hate your father? I don't know what that is. It's almost scary. This one girl who was very rebellious from Crown Heights. I spoke to her and she says, my mother is not going to control my life. For the last 3 years, she's been living in California, having boyfriends one after the other.
It sounds like all my kids.
So she's living 3 years already away from the home, doing whatever she wants, and she's screaming, my mother will not control my life. I said, she has no control over your life. What should I say? But why do you hate your mother? Because I don't hate her. I said, but what you're doing is kind of killing her. She says, well, too bad. I said, you don't call that hatred? That is, to me, it's more disturbing than the Yetzer Hara to marry a guy. Where is that coming from? What is this phenomenon?
Okay, so your last two stories is a good segue for me to pivot in a little bit of a different direction. And it's more about discussing and speaking to the consciousness of the shluchim. Okay? So you mentioned about the kid who didn't care about the parents' feelings, and I'm going to share two stories, if that's okay. And I'm stuck between these two stories, and I suspect a lot of guys here are stuck between these two stories. So one is, again, I bring my father in, obviously a pivotal role in my shlichus. I'm 17 years old. It's a Shabbos off in LA. I come home with several kids for Shabbos. I lived in LA, so it worked out. And my father's totally livid, screaming at the office upstairs, "You're finishing what Hitler started," and he's just pounding away. Now, I was embarrassed. I was 17 years old. I could care less what the topic is, but I knew exactly what the topic was. So I tell everybody, and people like, my friends are like, maybe you should get your father a milkshake or something, calm him down. So I go upstairs, and he's screaming, and I realized from the conversation who he's talking to. It was a Jewish woman. In other words, her kids will be Jewish anyways, in theory, right? And he's just pounding and screaming, his veins are pumping, the whole thing. I knew I couldn't interrupt him, but when he was finished, I said, "Tom, I understand you're doing your job, but why do you have to take it so personal?" So he looks at me, and I'll never forget it. He goes, "'Cause it is personal." That's story number one. That stays with me, and still stays with me. Story number two is I'm on shlichus. This is about 10 years ago. Great guy coming from San Diego, young adult. He's in finance, one of what we call A-listers. He goes on a Federation mission to Israel, sits next to a wonderful girl named Rachel Cohen. I should really edit the names here. Falls in love with her. We're better than this land of Israel. Comes back, he's excited, speaks to me, this, that. Of course, I find out that this person's mother was a Reformed convert. What do you do? At the time, I had lunch with him, and I took the high moral ground, and I said, "Listen, you're too good of a friend for me not to tell you what's going on here. Your kids are not going to be Jewish, and I know she's great, and I talk to her, and she's talking great." And he appreciated my honesty, and he ended up with her, ended up marrying her. She was on the board of the Federation. They said, "This guy Schwarzbach's on the high cap, you think he's a cool guy, he's a zealot like the rest of them." I got it pretty good in terms of on the back end. They're married today. They live in a different area. Their kids go to a Chabad preschool, as the story goes. And so I'm stuck between these two stories of it is personal, and it should be personal to everybody. And at the same time, you share two stories which made me think about this, about where the parents care. I think most of us, or many of us, maybe not in Europe, or Argentina, or wherever, but most of us here in America are dealing with a generation whose parents don't care. And so, okay, that's one level.
A lot don't care.
A lot don't care, that's one level. Okay, so some areas, there is and there is, right? But there are many that...
It's rare to have those who really go like they...
Yeah, there's some, but most of them are today, at least the majority, let's look at the numbers, at least 50% easily are happy if their kid's happy, and that's it. So my question to you is, can you help us get unstuck? What should the consciousness of the shliach be? From one side, it's personal, and you should do everything you can to stop an intermarriage. From the other side, if you do everything you can to stop intermarriage, you may have to close down your Chabad house. Its ramifications are incredible. We're not whitewashing intermarriage. We're not saying it's okay. I read your book. I read the book from Krasyansky, just came up with a book with all the letters from the Rebbe into the marriage. This is our world. This is what we care about. This is what we're dedicating our lives to. How do we straddle this situation that we find ourselves in? It's difficult to be in a state of stuckness. We want to be waking up in the morning proud, excited, feeling good about our shlichus. So I think we all could use a little help in this area.
Thank you for
I
the
don't know.
question.
I'm married already. I don't know what's up with that. Okay. It's just, I'm living it, and we all are. So.
There was a time when people who didn't keep kosher and didn't have a mezuzah on the door would not marry out. That was like going too far, right? It was like one step too radical. And there was a hierarchy. People would not keep kosher, but they have a mezuzah on the door. What am I, not a Jewish family? So they had a mezuzah. They maybe didn't have a mezuzah, but they wouldn't go out on Yom Kippur. They would go out on Yom Kippur, but they wouldn't marry a shiksa. So there was like a hierarchy of
A separate tailing for trade.
That's right.
yeah. They had a separate oven for their today. I think there's a matzah today. There is no difference. You can't say, okay, maybe you don't keep kosher, but marry out. Today it's the same thing. You're either in or you're out. If you're out, you're out. What's the difference? So that sensitivity, you wouldn't marry out, would you? I mean, you wouldn't want your kids to be non-Jews. Why not? So we don't have that you can't make that assumption. So you're asking basically, a person who is not interested in being Jewish, what do you say to them? And you're going to pick on their marriage and say, oh no, this you can't do. Why don't you pick on Shabbos? Say, oh no, Shabbos you can't drive. You're not going to do that. So the question really is, how are you mekadev someone to Yiddishkeit who has no Yiddishkeit? How do you know they have no Yiddishkeit? They're perfectly comfortable marrying a guy.
Or they have their perception of Yiddishkeit means it's a cultural one.
That it's a mitzvah to marry a guy.
No, that's a cultural perception of Yiddishkeit.
Yeah. And mixing cultures is a good thing. It's healthy for everybody. New blood. I started Beis Chana. I thought this is going to be easy. Women are coming to learn? What's the problem? You're halfway home. So I'm sitting there saying, you know how your grandmother used to, there's a my grandmother. Zayden, there's no Zayden. So I'm trying to find a hook to say, why should you do mitzvahs? Why do you need this? And it wasn't working. Because no matter what I said, it's like, I don't need that. It's nice. I don't need that. And we're dealing, this is 40 years ago, 50 years ago. We're dealing with a new reality and thinking like in the olden days. Marrying out is exactly the same as Cholul Akum.
Off the record.
So you find out that the person you're being mekadev drinks Cholul Akum. What would you do? What would you do? You would ask him to put on tefillin and that she should light Shabbos candle. So I think that the only thing left to do is asay tov. The sur mirah, we're not going to win. I think.
The question sometimes comes up more when the person is doing the Yudasita. It's easier to get them to put on film than to stop the marriage.
Right.
And they could be already your customer and they're already putting on film for years. When it comes to the marriage, they'll talk to you, but this is where I think some of the people I hear, myself included, are looking for the tips. Because they'll talk to you, but it's too difficult for them. They'll do other things you say, they'll grow. But when it comes to the marriage, it's too much.
Because they're stuck emotionally.
They're stuck emotionally, or they're already used to the fact that everyone does it, so why do they have to do this mitzvah, so they do other ones? That whole, like you said, the taboo is long broken.
Well, it's the big ask. They have to uproot their entire life and go back into the dating game and try to find a significant other. It's the hardest thing. One thing to give up halakha, another thing to go back into the world of dating and that.
Yeah, it's a big nisoyim. There's no question. You're asking someone to break up a relationship which they invested so much in. You're asking mamash for an akedah, which is unfair. But if they're putting on tefillin and they're already close to you, and maybe they're even thinking of keeping Shabbos, you have a little bit of leverage here.
Exactly. That's where there's what to learn.
Right.
How to talk.
So in such a person, when you say, but I'm not sure that even if you get married, it would be a marriage, they're going to hear you because putting on film has sensitized them at least a little bit.
for some people, marriage doesn't necessarily mean what you think marriage. So you could tell them from today to tomorrow, it's not really a marriage, but it doesn't just go over the head.
All right, so good. So ask them, why are you bothering to marry? Just live together like you are, probably.
Hasidim were black.
Huh?
Quote the one, Hasidim were black. That famous quote. Okay.
Oh, in this room have?
By secondhand, we have my father, which the letter's already printed, and also was a cousin of mine, one time went by the Rebbe, and the Rebbe's famous general answer, which I think does work well, is that address the non-Jewish partner in the relationship. You mentioned that earlier, which is, if you care about someone, he said it to a cousin of mine, Marina, that if you truly love each other, he said, but we love each other. He said, if you truly love each other, that you won't bring them into this tragedy. But the Rebbe can say that. It's harder for us to do, but the Rebbe use that language, don't bring them into this tragedy. Look, there's another story that my father told me about. Jan Pierce went into the Rebbe, whose son married a non-Jew, and he asked a bracha for the grandchildren. And the Rebbe told him, not your grandchildren. And they were living in San Francisco at the time. I think the amazing finish of the story is what we're about to hear, is that the Rebbe actually, I guess how America's called, Chaim Misha, who was there then to follow up and see how did he take it. In other words, it's one thing that you're going to, lay it out. It's another thing you're going to follow up, which is mind-blowing when you think about all things. But I'm saying that I think that's the struggle of the Shliach today, and we're hearing what's going on. We know the Rebbe's position on this. We know we're the strongest one. We know there's the most to lose on this topic, more than Palavaka, more than anything else. And the only other tip that I think I can share is to think about it in terms of schus and chiyuv. It's another thing I did hear from the old man. That if someone's going to convert, you have to ask yourself, what's happening here? If it's legitimate and they're going to be benefiting from being a yid, there's chusim, there's mitzvahs to be a yid, or chas v'shalom, it's a Mickey Mouse situation, and all of a sudden they're going to not keep Shabbos anyways, not keep kosher anyways. So using that at least as a tool in the back of your head as you navigate these tough situations. But I think, again, till 120, you're able to navigate the different generations. The tool that you're finishing what Hitler started, our young adults don't know who Hitler is. So we have to find other tools, and I think we're looking for that.
You see a common answer in the Rebbe's letters, that the Rebbe says that couples that are intermarried are not really happy. And they keep it quiet so people don't know. Is that something any of you could share more about? Could that be a tool we could prove it or identify it and say, like, look, it's not working?
And does that apply in this generation?
I'll ask you that.
And does it apply to these foolish people who can't see past their own nose? Oh yeah, we're very happy, we're going to be happy. You're talking to immature, drunk on love people. Then nothing you say is going to, they'll dismiss everything. In other words, there's no one to talk to. And I think that's pretty common.
Rabbi Friedman, are you saying that you shouldn't bring it up to people? If someone comes in and says, oh, I'm met this girl who's not Jewish, whatever it is, are you saying the response is smile and put on tefillin with them? Or are we supposed to respond to it and push back?
If they have any intelligence at all, then you can say, it won't be a real marriage. It'll just be a union, it won't be a reunion. You can say that, you should say that. Because, they shouldn't be able to come back and say, why didn't you tell me? So you told them. Well, are you thinking that that's going to break them up and they're going to call off the wedding? Not necessarily.
Sometimes we feel that they missed the memo. That means they're very involved. You're going to go to Hebrew school and everything. But how did you miss that one? As you say, everything is Shavah b'Shavah now. Cholav Akum and Akum and themselves is Neitzah. So what's the chinuch? What can we do, those who have Hebrew schools, preschools? What's the chinuch in that regard?
Literally, you have to start all over. So you can't come to someone who has had no chinuch for all practical purposes and say, how could you?
Right.
How could I what?
So what is the chinuch? How do we say this properly?
And
I mean-
especially to kids whose parents are intermarried.
I do it at the last bar mitzvah lesson, and I have nothing to lose. Really? I say I do it the last, like the chassan class is at the last class. There's a bar mitzvah lesson is the last class. And then I know he's not coming back. So I say it often, whatever, I say what I say, but.
But are there any tips today with the dating apps? People can identify as Jewish as they want, so we've kind of like lost our control over people dating Jews in the internet sphere. But in our events, every once in a while, a guy meets a girl at our event or vice versa, and one of them is a shiksa mamish. And we obviously advertise only to Yidden, and I'm sure many people had this before, and it's mamish, it's Himmel-Geshay, so maybe there's tips to mitigate that at least there should be, in your events, there shouldn't be a union of sorts, maybe Meish on the field, I don't know.
I know there was a conversation many years ago at a Pegisha. Chabad houses were not like everywhere and popular the way they are today. And Hillel House was considered the Jewish presence on campus. And this guy explained what the idea behind Hillel House is. The Hillel House is there to offer Jewish students a place where they can meet other Jews. And the students who were there for the Pegisha said, why would I want to do that? In other words, you're talking to somebody who's like kind of committed to marrying a Jew, but they don't meet them, so you're offering them a place where they can meet. These people said, why would I want to meet a Jew? We're talking to a completely different mentality. So I think we have to give up the idea that intermarriage is more of a breach in Yiddishkeit than Cholavachim. It's another expression of the same problem. They're not interested in anything Jewish.
Well, Rebbe's letters and also Yechiduyas, where the Rebbe says you have to speak to both of them, to Jew and the non-Jew, and to explain them frankly that for both of you it's a danger. According to my own experience, it's not always possible. It always depends on the context. But many times it does work, because a non-Jew, when he or she sees a rabbi in front of him or her, and explaining that, it's a danger for both of you, and everybody knows the whole Jewish history and all that. It's frightening, and it can work. Not always, but many times, yes.
I agree, but I think it's very advanced in the conversation. In other words, both the guy and the girl, one's Jewish, one's not, is willing to meet the very religious rabbi, and they're very well aware of what he's going to say to them. So they're already bought in to what's going to be happening and what's going to be said. You've already put the work in. So we're talking about, it's hard for me to believe that someone would come to you without many, many times or points that you've already connected them. At least 10 times before you either met her or met him. Otherwise, why would they want to go see each other to a rabbi who they know they're going to say, not get together? So yes, if you have that hashbah already on them, so you already have a much better fighting chance. I
tell them to come to me because maybe I could help them to get married.
Great, that's smart. I like that. And if they fall for it, then you're winning. I guess so. That's a good one. Yeah.
But I think the correct point is talk to both of them. This idea, no, I won't talk to the Goyish. The parents refuse to see him, refuse to talk to him, it's not a good idea. Because that makes the Jewish partner much more protective and defensive, and you haven't even met him and you hate him, and it's a disadvantage to you to be the first thing you do is, let me meet him. Let's see what this choice of yours is.
That already creates a way.
Can I suggest that you I'd like to ask you to expound a little bit on your whole concept of why marry. Because I don't know, I found it to be very effective when you tell somebody why marry altogether. You said it in 2 words before, but you've written about it, and if you can maybe dedicate a few minutes to explain the concept that marriage is not a human idea, it's a divine idea, and therefore it doesn't work. When does it work? Doesn't work. What are you looking for?
So I just want to tell you a really beautiful story. There was a woman at Beis Hamel back in the 70s who heard that if you live together under certain circumstances, you're considered married and you have to get a get. She freaked out. This was the 70s, and everybody was... Anyway, so I went with her to the Bzalnishinen over Dworkin. He was such an incredible Bagdas. He asked her all sorts of questions, trying to find a loophole that would suggest that they did not intend marriage. He said, like, did you keep a bank account? No. Did you keep your own apartment just in case? No. Did your friends consider you married? Yes. Did you consider yourself married? Yes. Everything he asked was like, this is not going good. It was almost an hour of digging and questioning him. And finally he said to her, which a stroke of genius, siyata dishmaya for Arov, he said, the day you moved in, did you call your mother to tell her? She said, no. He said, okay, forget about it. She considered herself married, but she wouldn't call her mother and say, I'm married, because she knew. Yeah. So really, what is this marriage business, l'chatchila? That's a strong subject. I don't know if it's going to break them up, but it's, yeah. Why get married? More recently, I had this couple who came and they said, we're very much in love, we want to get married, could you do the wedding? I said, you're in love? And he said, yes. I said, then why get married? What's the marriage going to add? You're going to love him more? Why marry? So this craziness that you marry because you're in love, that's such a poison and such a lie, fake news. You have to get married because you're in love? If you're in love, don't ruin it. What are you getting married for? So they say things like, because we want to make a commitment. A commitment to what? That you're going to stay married even if you don't love each other? Not going to happen. As long as you love each other, you're going to stay together. What's the commitment? If they have a little seichel left that hasn't been burnt away by their passions, Taki, why get married? It's expensive. It's complicated. Your parents will get upset. What do you need it for? What is it going to do for your relationship? It's so they can say, okay, fine. Actually, halachically, I don't know whoever. Is there an aveda to have a wedding with a non-Jew? A Jew and a non-Jew? The wedding is an aveda? Huh?
Celebration?
Yeah. They're living together. And now they want to get married. Say, oh, no, don't get married. What's wrong with... The marriage is not the problem, is it?
Doesn't change
The living together is the problem. Say, if they get married, they're going to live together for a long time. So yeah, what does that mean?
Children.
Which can't be done anyway.
It can.
No, it can be done, not a lot of things.
No, well, this is not mean that you shouldn't or you can't. You can't.
Possibility.
Both.
It's either or.
No, you shouldn't do it. And it's not halachic anyway. You shouldn't do it the way they're going to do it.
Yeah, you shouldn't give your son or your daughter to...
Get married.
Those things for their own.
Yeah.
So getting married adds a issur to the issur of Zayna.
That's not what the conversation was about. That's not why everyone's getting nervous. That's the same as Slovak.
I thought Slovak was like marrying chicks.
Anyway, what we're left with, but practically speaking, is be Mekarif people to Yiddishkeit. Wherever they live.
Very simple. One Aveda affects a person doing an Aveda, and intermarriage can affect generations.
My point wasn't they shouldn't get married. The point I asked you to explain is why, even two Jews, why get married. And to explain the concept, for them to understand, to start thinking, it's not just a form organization.
Agrees, and certainly I look back at the mistakes and the ones that I've lost. Had I had a different approach, I think I would have done better. Is this idea about the conversation about marriage. Had a different approach, I think I would have done better. Is this idea about the conversation about marriage. Why to get married? I think that, at the time, I was so freaked out. Why to get married? I think that, at the time, I was so freaked out that someone's going to marry a non-Jew. In many ways, it didn't allow me to have that conversation, which would have certainly helped out a lot in letting people think when they finish the conversation with the rabbi, when they're walking alone and she's walking alone, whether they're in the same car or not, they have to have a different thought process about what's going on. That's a critical tool. I just want to say, because someone asked before about, are they happy? Or have you seen them? So I find that so-called self-proclaimed atheists, a Jew and a non-Jew, they do better. Anyone who's a little bit spiritual, they don't do better. And I just think also, if I could share, that right now, all of us, after October 7th, we're in a different world. Everybody's in a different world, no matter what you do, certainly if you're in Slippus, and certainly if you're on the field. The conversation of marrying a Jew is a lot easier. The Jew feels called out, they feel isolated as it is, and the opportunity to have that conversation. In other words, before October 7th, let's all have a cultural, homogenization of everything. Today, those people, I'm thinking about one in particular who I lost for the time being, whose Hebrew name was Menachem Mendel, so that just adds to it. When October 7th hit, there's at least 5 different couples that I knew, 5 different guys, were side texting me saying she has no idea what we're going through. She has no idea what we're going through. These are people who were married for many, many years already. So we're in a different time, and the discussion about marriage is critical, and the climate that we're in, I think, can lead to those discussions.
Without getting into a whole nother controversial business, what this boils down to is very, very fundamental. You can't convince people today that Yiddishkeit, mitzvahs, anything about being Jewish is necessary. Nothing is necessary. Don't get married? Fine, I won't get married. I'll have children without marriage. Nothing is necessary. Nothing. You don't have to be a man. You can be a woman. You don't have to be a woman. Nothing is necessary. You can't convince people that something is good for them. They don't want to hear it. They don't buy it. They don't care.
It's a negative. Anything absolute today is considered to be a negative. There's no absolutes, because that's very...
Even selfishness. You can't even tell people to be selfish. Narcissism is not selfish. Selfish means I do what's best for me. Narcissism means I do what I feel even if it's going to kill me. It's not best for me. So even what's best for me is, it doesn't sell anymore. So the question really boils down to this. You don't intermarry because it's not good for you. Forget about it. It's not, it doesn't register, not that they don't agree. They don't hear it. The only thing left to say is, will God consider you married? In other words, change the subject from them to the Eberstein. Because for them, forget about it. You're talking to a narcissist. You can't tell them right from wrong, better than worse. You'll suffer, you'll be happy, you won't be happy. It's not that they don't believe you. They don't care. They don't care enough about themselves to care about themselves. So they're drunk on this love business, they're willing to sacrifice their lives for this. They're ready to go Mesilas Nefesh. So who are you talking to? The whole idea is, and it's a whole other conversation, you can't tell any Jew, even the most frum kid in Meir Sha'orim, you can't say, you need to put on tefillin. Because it's not true. It's not true. The neshama is gonna, fine. I don't need to put on tefillin, and I'll prove it to you because it just so happens that for the last half a year I have not been putting on tefillin. So the sprach, the lashon, you have to, you must. No, I don't have to, and I must. I'm not buying it. So what's left? You don't need tefillin because it's not even your idea. The Eibishter asks you to put on tefillin because it's negeya to him. So do you have a minute to do something for him, or it's only for you? We got to shift, and this is happening all over the world. We're shifting the attention from me, from creation to creator. If you can do that, you may even have Jewish grandchildren. And if not, there's nothing to talk about. The grandfather who says you have to put on tefillin is killing his kid. Because the kid is going to wake up one day and say, you know what? I don't have to.
Prevents. So it was spoken about that to speak about marriage and what it means to be married. Have that conversation.
Just wanted to share a word I heard about Pina Shamiksa. Usually we understand it. They're just standing over you, watching you, controlling you. So I heard from someone, apparently Rebbe explains that Nitzav Olav means is standing on you, depending on you. Steht up there, nicht über dir, auf there, depends on you. So it's not a suffocating thought, but it's an empowering thought. The Pashat needs you. So what you were saying, you don't need to put on, but he needs you to do it. The Eibishter needs, the Eibishter wanted to need.
You had a question?
Yeah, so the day after the wedding, you didn't listen. The day after the wedding, are you calling him, do you call like, hey, you know, yesterday I wasn't interested in you guys getting married, but you want to come for Shabbos? Is that, how do you say, what do you say to that?
Fair question. They got married, now what?
So you never rejected them. You just told them you can't call it a marriage. So the day after, same, nothing changed.
Are we inviting for Shabbos now?
Yeah, why not? You never told them that you can't come for Shabbos.
What about
Try to make sure you know the wife's name, so don't say you and your wife.
Right.
What if they just started dating?
Recognize them as husband and wife.
What if they just started dating? And I just got an email. Hi, I'm dating this guy. I'm not Jewish. Can I bring him to the meal?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes?
Yes. And when they're there together, you tell them that it's not going to be a marriage. Let him know it too.
Do you have any advice for parents if children are marrying out of the faith? And should they go to the wedding? Should they not go to the wedding? They struggle with this. Do you have clear guidance or is that a case by case?
I've never got to the parent stage. Once it's usually I'm dealing with the subjects at hand. So I've never dealt with that.
For the parents, like I was saying before, this is such a painful devastation. Not because of the intermarriage, but because of the toxic relationship. They have no choice. The kid says either you come or you'll never see your grandchildren. What are parents supposed to do? It's emotional blackmail. So to tell the parents, no, you stand up for your, it's not the issue anymore. Is this a family? Are they still your children? This is so painful. And if the parents say, I think I have to go, okay, I'm not going to talk them out of it. Parents say, I can't go to such a wedding. Okay. This is not a principal matter anymore. This is a very, very personal, painful disaster in their lives. It's Eibishter zal ophieten. This one family where the parents are mamish good, full-fledged Sidische Yidden. And their son met somebody at college, and the whole business with hating. A month after they did get married, I talked to the father, say, knew what's going on. He says, look, they're happy. The others? He completely surrendered. He couldn't fight anymore. He's happy that they're happy, and what is he going to do? And the only thing you can do is have terrible rachmanis on such a... What did he do to deserve such... Not the aveda of it. The personal disaster. I imagine your kids saying, you do this or you'll never see your grandchildren? And you're worried about the aveda? How do you talk to the children like, okay, bistashegitz, but you have to kill your father? What is that? And I literally think it's a disease. It's a mental... I think they're potter. They're potter. I'm serious. They're not normal.
It's a cultural thing. Everybody around you today is all the culture that they're watching. The young kids understand that the parents are old, and it's very cool not to listen to your parents. The parents are idiots.
I understand there are families that are dysfunctional. We're talking about normal people, and then all of a sudden, the hatred and the rejection and the blackmail and the threatening. It's like a dibuk. It is a dibuk.
You address the diving into conversion. Immediately, she's going to convert, he's going to convert. Can we get 2 minutes on that?
Sure, I just wanted to just go back for a second, because 50% of, in general, across the board in America, parents are divorced. So dysfunction is out there in a big way. So the fact that someone's dysfunctional, doesn't care about the parents, they could have been living with the mother, or grew up with the mother, so there's a lot of that. I want to address Shmuli's question. I think it's an important question about if someone says they want to bring the non-Jewish partner, friend, girlfriend, boyfriend to Friday night. So two answers. One is, again, as a kid growing up, see how the times have changed. My father told me about someone who you know, and he wanted to bring over, and they were very friendly, they were close, and he wanted to bring over a non-Jewish girlfriend, and my father said no. And he was so hurt by that, but he thought about it for a second. He said, wait a second, this guy is my friend, and he's close to me. If he said no, unlike maybe other rabbis that are quick to say yes, there must be something to it, and he followed it up, and the conversation evolved, and he dropped it. Now that was 30-some years ago. Today, when someone asks me, I say yeah, and I make sure to go heavy on the Jewish soul connected to Israel. We're persecuted. Just go heavy on the Jewish soul, and hopefully, they feel uncomfortable.
Actually, ask him. So, are you from Germany? Was your father a Nazi?
They looked many years to get married, good, the Jewish people, but they didn't find, so they get fed up going in the street. I mean, they want that.
Or the guy who says, Jewish girl, I did that already. Now I'm on to something else.
So obviously it doesn't mean anything to them. We had a girl who was very close to us, spent a lot of time in our home, and she married an African. I said, what is this? She said, you didn't find me a Jew, it's your fault.
So in that case, that really they are like losers because they didn't find, but they wanted. I mean, there's many people that they cry, they say, if this person will be a Jew, I will be happy, but now I cannot leave her.
Yeah, so they're admitting that marrying a non-Jew is a disaster.
Right.
I'm a loser.
Oh, the guy is 40 years old. He's been looking for a Jew for many, many years. And he can't find anybody. He's desperate. Let's get married.
So I want to tell you one quick story.
Any of those things. He just wants to get married.
I want to tell a quick story that has to do with everything.
Let's just finish with this story because you have another workshop.
Yeah.
You have to start. You're gonna have to walk fast.
Yeah.
It's all the way across town.
It's in the other
It's
crown.
faster than driving.
It's in the other crown heights.
The other crown.
So here's the story, a quick story. This guy comes and tells me he wants to divorce his wife. Immediately. He can't look at her, he can't stand her, and this is like very sudden. And the wife is in shock, she doesn't know what's going on. They come to talk, so he says he invested $30,000 in a venture. That's his whole life saving. And verspielt. He lost the whole $30,000. He was devastated. And she said to him, it's only money. Now he can't stand her guts. She says, what did I do wrong? It's only money. And I really was like, what is he so angry about? The answer is very simple. She didn't first give a krecht. Seriously. She didn't say, oh my God. She said, it's only money. When I need your sympathy the most, you're completely not there. You stand there like cold-blooded, like a stranger telling me I shouldn't worry. That is very insulting. So, the famous story that if you're not a Rebbe because when somebody came to your Chiddush, you didn't first give a krecht. If you don't really feel bad for the person who says, I couldn't find a Jew, I'm old, I'm lonely, if you don't give a krecht, then nothing you say is going to make any impression. You really have to have genuine Rahmanis. If you have Rahmanis, then you have earned the right to say something, to give advice, to agree, disagree. You didn't give a krecht. Who are you to tell me I should worry, I shouldn't worry? So this is in human relations. You don't give advice. First, you go into the problem. There's a very good word from Rabbi Mendel. He was by his doctor, Mendel Futterfass. He was by the doctor, and the doctor was treating him. And Mendel says, son, Teiv shebereifim legehenim. So the doctor said, this is not a good time to say this to me. Right. So Mendel says, no, it's nicht verstanden. Teiv shebereifim. If you're a good doctor, is legehenim. You're willing to enter the gehenim of your patient. You're willing to feel his pain, to see his problem. You're not just an observer. You're not just a spectator. If you're not feeling their gehenim, then you have no right to give any advice, to say anything at all, no matter how holy the statement is. First, give a krecht. And then you'll maybe think of something right to say. Anyway, the point is, Yiddishkeit has to flourish. Whether it's with marriage, without marriage, intermarriage, cholovakum, not cholovakum, it's all the same thing. There's an Eibishter, an Ayid is Ayid, and if we can convince people of that, then they won't eat cholovakum and they won't.
Amen.
Yeshek Hayach to Rabbi Manis Friedman for spending time with us. Thanks to May Schwartz for traveling.